Hello, my name is Samantha Hansen, and I will be presenting on leptospirosis. What is it? It is a bacterial disease that is zoonotic. It is spread through contact with contaminated animal urine. The spiral-shaped bacteria are motile. They use a flagella to propel themselves. They are gram-negative and are so small that a dark field microscope would be necessary in order to see them using immunofluorescence. They are aerobic and do not produce spores. There are 21 known species, and of them, there are not many specifics known about how they directly attack the cells of the body. Certain species use toxins, others use lipopolysaccharides to trigger an immune response and cause inflammation. The one that most commonly affects humans is Leptospira interrogans, which uses adhesions to attach to the epithelium, monocytes, and macrophages. Where can it be found? Typically, it is found in tropical regions. That's where it's endemic, although it can be found pretty much worldwide. In areas that have a rainy season and a dry season, it's typically found during the rainy season and not so much during the dry season. It can be killed by freezing, drying, and exposure to the sun, and it's more commonly found after a major weather event such as a flood, a hurricane, or a tsunami. Infections. It can enter the body through cuts on the skin when those cuts come into contact with water that's been contaminated with infected animal urine. So swimming or wading in fresh water with an open wound is one way that an infection can occur. It can also enter the body through the eyes, through opening your eyes underwater. Swallowing contaminated water is another way that the bacteria can get into the body. And eating contaminated food is a rare way that the bacteria can infect humans, although more commonly it is through entering through cuts on the body. And that is the way that it typically has the most severe infection, because when the bacteria is in the bloodstream, it's able to do more damage more quickly. So, this is a diagram that sort of explains it all. Rodents act as a reservoir for the bacteria, and when they are infected and urinate, other animals can come in contact with their infected urine. Dogs, livestock like pigs, sheep, cattle, and other wild animals, bats, deer, other rodents, other wild animals, and then humans can come into their urine through infected soil, contaminated soil, or bodies of water. As far as pets go, pretty much any mammal can contract leptospirosis. There are vaccines available for pets such as dogs. However, they're not 100% effective because there are so many different species of leptospirosis, and there are more that affect animals like dogs than there are that affect humans. Cats are typically more resistant to leptospirosis, and so there's not as much worry with pet cats coming into contact with it. Areas with poor sanitation are also areas to be aware of a higher risk of leptospirosis. As far as symptoms go, the first stage is very nonspecific, and the symptoms are very flu-like. So you'd have fever, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, muscle aches, conjunctivitis, and chills and a rash. The rash can spread on the arms, on the trunk, on the legs, pretty much everywhere. During the second stage, which is sometimes called Weil's disease, depending on where the spirochetes have attacked, that will determine what symptoms are shown. If they have attacked the liver, then jaundice will manifest. If the lungs are attacked, then respiratory distress and coughing up blood in the mucus. If the kidneys have been attacked, then acute renal failure can manifest, and if the brain has been attacked, then meningitis will present, and that will present as a very bad headache, stiffness, and pain in the neck, things of that nature. As far as diagnosis and treatment, for diagnosing leptospirosis, an ELISA test can be used to test for the antigens against leptospirosis in the plasma. PCR is another technique that can be used to test for leptospirosis. It tests for the bacterial DNA in the blood, and a dark field microscope can be used in order to see the pathogen. You wouldn't want to try to culture for leptospirosis because that test would take 3 weeks, and that would be too long a time to really relieve the symptoms that the patient is undergoing. As far as treatments for leptospirosis infection, early treatment is really best. Symptoms can manifest between 2 days and 2 weeks after exposure, and that early treatment really is what makes the difference between a more severe case and a more mild one. Penicillin G has been shown to be very effective at managing the bacteria, and if a patient is allergic to penicillin, then doxycycline can be used. Additional supportive therapy may be necessary if it is an advanced case. In that case, it would be treatment such as IV fluid, a ventilator if they were in respiratory distress, or possibly a blood transfusion if it had gotten that severe. As far as prevention, avoiding swimming in fresh water after heavy rain, or if cuts are present on the body, avoiding swallowing that water, avoiding drinking fresh water out of streams or lakes, avoiding contact with animal urine in general, and avoiding walking through standing floodwater barefoot, and avoiding contact with that floodwater in general. Floodwater is a very easy way to come in contact with leptospirosis. It rains heavily, and then the contaminated urine washes down from mountains and areas of higher elevation where there could be farms or rodent populations, wildlife that has been infected with leptospirosis, and then that contaminated urine gets into the water, which then washes down and pools up in lakes and rivers and standing water from floods. And so that's an easy way to be exposed to leptospirosis. So if you absolutely had to walk through the floodwater, then when you got home you'd want to make sure that you washed your feet with soap and water. Who's most at risk? Farmers, mine workers, military personnel, really anyone working in a field involving animals, and anyone engaging in recreational activities near water. So kayakers, swimmers, hikers to some extent, etc. Leptospirosis is a fairly rare disease. However, it should not be dismissed, and those who are in populations that are at risk should be aware of the symptoms and know what to look out for.